On February 12th, 2026, Bloomberg got their hands on something they weren't supposed to see. A leaked memo, a classified document from inside the Kremlin, passed around between Russia's most powerful officials. And what's written inside that memo is about to change how you think about silver, about gold, about the dollar, and about your money. Here's what it said. Russia, the same country that spent 4 years screaming that the dollar is dying, that BRICS will build a new currency, that de-dollarization is the future, that same Russia is now quietly begging to come back to the US dollar. And they're not just asking nicely. They're offering America the biggest economic deal anyone has ever seen. $12 trillion. Oil, gas, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, lithium, copper, platinum, and right in the middle of all of it, one simple request. Let us use your dollar again. Now, if you hold silver, if you hold gold, if you watched silver rocket to $121 and then crash all the way down to 64, this memo is the missing piece of the puzzle. It explains the 37% silver crash on January 30th. It explains why gold fell from 5,500 to 4,400, and it might tell us what comes next. This isn't just some political drama happening far away. This is about your portfolio, your silver stack, your money. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's going on and what I think you should do about it. But first, I need to take you back to where this whole story started. Welcome to the hidden economy. If you're new here, this is where we break down the real forces behind your money, the stuff that mainstream media either skips or gets completely wrong. If you find this useful, do me a quick favor, tap that like button and subscribe. It takes 1 second, and it's the only way the algorithm shows this to more people. And honestly, every single person holding silver or gold needs to hear what I'm about to say. Let's get into it. Rewind to February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine, and the West fights back. Not with bullets, with money. They kick Russia out of SWIFT, the global system that moves trillions of dollars between banks every single day. They freeze $300 billion of Russia's central bank money sitting in European accounts. They sanction Russian banks, Russian billionaires, Russian oil companies. The message was brutal. You're done. No more dollars, no more euros. Figure it out. Most people thought Russia was finished. But Russia did something nobody expected. They didn't collapse. They turned east. They turned to China. And within months, the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan replaced the dollar in almost everything Russia bought and sold. By late 2024, Putin went on TV and said 90% of trade between Russia and China was now in yuan and rubles. By 2025, that number hit 99.1%. I want you to sit with that for a second. 99.1%. Two of the biggest economies on earth doing almost all their business without touching a single American dollar. Russia became the face of a movement. De-dollarization. Putin stood on stage at the BRICS summit in 2024 and literally held up a prototype of a new BRICS banknote. The message to the world was loud. The dollar is old news. We're building something new. And people who hold gold and silver ate this up. The logic made perfect sense. If the whole world moves away from the dollar, everyone needs a new safe place to park their wealth. Gold, silver. Central banks were buying gold like crazy. 863 tons in 2025 alone. Gold went from 2,000 to 5,500. Silver went from 24 to 120. It felt like the easiest money in the world. But here's what I've learned about markets. When something feels too easy, it usually means you're missing something. And what was happening inside Russia behind closed doors was about to blow up the entire story. Now stop for a second. This next part is the key to everything. Almost nobody is covering it, and it completely changes how you should think about silver right now. When Russia dumped the dollar and jumped into the yuan, the world cheered. But inside Russia, things were falling apart quietly, and I mean really falling apart. September 2024, Russian banks hit a nightmare. They needed yuan to pay Chinese companies for all the stuff they were importing. But the yuan wasn't there. The overnight borrowing rate for yuan in Moscow shot past 200%. That's not a typo. 200%. Russian businesses literally couldn't get the currency they needed to pay their bills. Big Chinese banks, Ping An, Bank of Ningbo, China Guangfa, they straight up stopped processing payments from Russia, scared of getting hit by American sanctions. Payments that used to clear in a day started taking 18 days. Imagine running a company and you can't pay your suppliers for almost 3 weeks because the entire banking system is choking. But that was just the start. China figured out very quickly that Russia had nowhere else to go. And here's the thing about negotiation. When you have no other options, the person across the table sets the price. China forced Russia to sell oil at 23 to 29% less than what other countries paid. They demanded Russian natural gas at prices lower than what Russians themselves pay domestically. And then in January 2026, China just stopped buying Russian electricity. No warning, no discussion. Just, your prices are too high, we're done. Imagine having one customer for your electricity and they just hang up the phone. And here's the part that really stings. The yuan isn't the dollar. The dollar works everywhere. You can trade it, spend it, convert it into anything, anywhere, anytime. The yuan doesn't work like that. It's tightly controlled by Beijing. Russian companies were earning yuan, but couldn't do much with it back home. Couldn't convert it easily. Couldn't get loans in it. The liquidity wasn't there. It's like getting paid in gift cards that only work at one store. It gets even worse. When the liquidity crisis hit, Russian businesses started losing money just on currency conversion. The ruble-yuan exchange rate was swinging all over the place. Companies couldn't hedge because the market for ruble-yuan instruments was too thin. Small businesses trying to trade with China just gave up. The friction costs were eating their profits alive. And this is the dirty little secret of de-dollarization that nobody wants to talk about. The dollar works smoothly. Everything else has friction, and friction costs money. So think about what actually happened here. Russia left the dollar to become independent, but they didn't become independent. They became dependent on China instead. They traded one boss for another. Except the new boss knew Russia was desperate and had zero backup plan. Russia went from answering to Washington to answering to Beijing. And Beijing wasn't gentle about it. Now picture Russia in early 2026. The economy grew 3.6% in 2024, mostly from insane war spending. But by the third quarter of 2025, that crashed to 0.6%. That's not a slowdown. That's hitting a wall at full speed. Real inflation running around 20 to 22%, even though the official number says 6. The government hiked sales tax from 20 to 22% in January just to keep the lights on. Interest rates at 16%, crushing every business that isn't making weapons. Banks charging insane rates for loans, construction slowing, manufacturing outside of weapons shrinking. Oil revenues came in 25% below what the government planned. Brent crude expected to fall to $60 a barrel in 2026, lowest in 5 years. And Russia has to sell at a discount on top of that because of sanctions. Double hit. Lower global prices, plus even lower Russian prices. 40% of the national budget going to the military, Soviet Union level. The civilian economy is dying. Unemployment at 2.2%, which sounds great until you realize it means there's literally nobody left to hire. People who should be building houses are making bullets. Real wages grew 6.5% in January 2025. By May, 0.1%. The money dried up. The war machine ate the economy. The yuan trapped them. BRICS delivered nothing. And the dream of replacing the dollar went nowhere. So what does Russia do? They pick up the phone and they call Washington. And this is where it gets wild. The guy running this from Russia's side is Kirill Dmitriev, head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund, Putin's go-to man for all things money. He's been sitting across the table from Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and what they've cooked up is being called the Dmitriev package. Ukraine's President Zelensky was the first to blow the whistle. His intelligence team intercepted the details. He said the package is worth roughly $12 trillion. To put that in perspective, Russia's entire economy produces about $2.7 trillion a year. This deal is more than 4 times their whole GDP. Then Bloomberg got the actual memo. 7 proposals, and each one is more jaw-dropping than the last. The big one first. Russia wants to go back to using the US dollar for energy deals. The country that led the global war against the dollar now wants back in. Let that sink in. Second, they want long-term contracts to buy American planes. After sanctions cut off Boeing and Airbus parts, Russian airlines have literally been ripping apart old planes to keep others flying. They're desperate. Third, joint oil and gas projects, Siberian gas fields, Arctic offshore drilling, liquefied natural gas. Russia's basically handing America the keys to some of the biggest untapped energy reserves on the planet. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Fourth, nuclear energy cooperation. This means American companies could get access to Russia's nuclear technology and uranium supply chains. Fifth, joint development in artificial intelligence, which is basically the new arms race. And sixth, mining partnerships for lithium, copper, nickel, and platinum. The exact metals that power everything from your phone to electric cars to fighter jets. Russia's sitting on mountains of this stuff. Seventh, and this one's spicy, Russia wants to team up with America to push fossil fuels over the green energy policies that Europe and China are pushing. They're basically saying, hey, America, let's make oil cool again. And knowing this administration, that pitch probably landed really well. But wait, there's a hidden sweetener most people are missing. Remember that $300 billion of Russia's money frozen in European banks? The deal hints that this money could become a signing bonus for the U.S. Some analysts have pointed out this might be the real reason the Trump team is so eager to move fast. $300 billion is a lot of motivation. Western officials who've seen the memo told Bloomberg something fascinating. They said some of these proposals look specifically designed to drive a wedge between America and Europe. Think about it. If America and Russia become energy partners, why would America care about European sanctions on Russia? That's the real game here. Russia isn't just offering a deal, they're offering to rearrange alliances. On February 13th, Russia confirmed the whole thing. This isn't a rumor anymore. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. It's happening. The biggest champion of de-dollarization in modern history just admitted they want back into the dollar system, and nobody in mainstream financial media is connecting the dots on why. But before I tell you what this means for silver, I need to take apart a narrative that's been living rent-free in the precious metal space for years, and I think a lot of people aren't going to like what I'm about to say. The BRICS de-dollarization story. You've heard it a million times. BRICS is building a new currency. BRICS will kill the dollar. Gold and silver to the moon because the dollar is toast. I've heard it too. Everyone in this space has. So what actually happened? At the 2025 BRICS summit in Brazil, they put out a 126-point declaration. Guess how many times they mentioned de-dollarization? 0. Not once. The biggest gathering of the countries supposedly trying to kill the dollar, and they couldn't even say the word. India's top diplomat said the dollar is the source of global economic stability. India's trade minister literally said, imagine sharing a currency with China, that's impossible. South Africa said no plans for a BRICS currency. Indonesia said they're not interested in de-dollarization. Brazil, the country hosting the whole thing, refused to push for a common currency. Then Trump dropped the hammer, 100% tariffs on any BRICS country that messes with the dollar. Think about what that means in real terms. India sells billions of dollars worth of goods to America every year. If they even hint at replacing the dollar, Trump doubles the cost of everything they export. Same for Brazil, same for South Africa, same for everyone. And one by one, every single BRICS country backed away from de-dollarization like it was on fire. Trump went on TV and said, BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar. He called it dead. Whether that's 100% accurate doesn't matter. The political message hit every finance minister in every BRICS country like a freight train. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of a 100% tariff. Now stop and think about the irony here. De-dollarization was supposed to free countries from American economic bullying, but the moment America actually applied pressure, the entire movement folded like a cheap suit. And that tells you something huge. The dollar isn't just a currency, it's a system. Banks run on it, trade runs on it, oil runs on it. And replacing a system that the entire world has used for 80 years is 1,000 times harder than printing a new banknote. The numbers don't lie. Dollar makes up 58 to 59% of all global reserves. The yuan, 2.5%. Let me say that again because it's important. The currency that was supposed to replace the dollar holds 2.5% of global reserves. The dollar holds 59. That's not a competition. That's a rounding error versus a heavyweight champion. Dollar is used in 89% of all currency trading on Earth. No BRICS currency exists. No working BRICS payment system. And now Russia, the loudest voice against the dollar, wants back in. So the BRICS story is dead. The de-dollarization narrative just got its legs cut off. And that brings us to the question you've been waiting for this entire video. What does all of this mean for your silver and your gold? Let me be straight with you. When Bloomberg dropped this story on February 12th, silver fell more than 10% in 60 minutes. Went from about $83 to $74. Gold went from $5,100 to $4,900. The market read the headline and said, Russia going back to the dollar means stronger dollar means bad news for metals. But that wasn't even the biggest crash. On January 30th, silver dropped 31.4% in a single day. Worst single day since 1980. Gold fell over 11%. That was Kevin Warsh getting nominated as Fed chair, which scared people because he's a hawk who loves higher interest rates. Plus, massive profit taking. Plus, margin calls forcing leveraged traders to dump everything at once. Silver went from 121 to 64, a 45% correction. Gold from 5,600 to 4,400, 21%. If you held through all of that, you know the pain. You know what those days felt like. Now in the short term, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Russian news does put some pressure on metals. If Russia comes back to the dollar, that's more demand for dollars. Stronger dollar usually means lower gold and silver prices because it costs foreigners more to buy them. The BRICS narrative getting weaker takes away one of the emotional reasons people were buying metals. And Warsh at the Fed probably means rates stay higher for longer, which makes holding metals less attractive compared to bonds. So yes, short term, more choppiness is possible, more dips. That's the honest truth, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But now let me tell you what I actually think. And this is where I need you to really lock in. Silver already corrected 45%, from 121 to 64. That's brutal. That's blood in the streets territory. At $60 to $70, I look at silver and I see a buying zone, not a sell zone, not a panic zone. A zone where smart money quietly loads up while everyone else is running scared. And let me be clear about something. I'm not saying silver can't dip a little more. It might. Markets are messy in the short term. But when I zoom out and look at the fundamentals, the picture hasn't changed one bit. And here's what no leaked Russian memo on Earth changes. Silver has been in a supply deficit for years. The world used 1.2 billion ounces last year. It produced about 1.03 billion. That's a gap of 160 to 200 million ounces every single year. More goes out than comes in. That math doesn't care about geopolitics. That math doesn't care about Kremlin memos. That math just keeps compounding. Silver is in everything. Solar panels, electric cars, 5G towers, medical equipment, military tech. Every EV uses 25 to 50 grams of silver. Every solar panel uses about 20 grams. The world is building more of all of these things, not less. That demand isn't disappearing because Russia decided it likes dollars again. And here's something most silver investors feel in their gut, but don't hear enough people say out loud. Physical silver is getting tight. COMEX and LBMA vaults drew down through 2024 and 2025. The available supply of good delivery bars has been shrinking. The gap between paper silver prices and actual physical silver you can hold in your hand is getting wider. That's not normal. When paper says one price and physical says another, it means the paper market is losing its grip on reality. And when that grip finally breaks, price discovery shifts to physical. That's when you see explosive moves to the upside. Central banks are still buying gold at record pace. China bought gold 15 consecutive months through January 2026. Russia, going back to the dollar, doesn't mean China stops buying gold. India doesn't stop. They're diversifying for reasons that go way beyond BRICS. Now, I know someone in the comments is about to say, "You're coping, the bull run is over, silver is going back to 30. And look, if that's what you believe, I respect it. But answer me this. America has $38 trillion in debt. That number isn't shrinking. Whatever happens with Russia, that debt keeps growing. And at some point, that math catches up with the dollar. When it does, gold and silver will be the place people run to. That's not speculation. That's history. And honestly, this deal is just a proposal right now. There's a massive gap between discussing a return to the dollar and actually doing it. Russia needs sanctions lifted first. That means Washington has to agree. Europe has to cooperate. The Ukraine war needs some kind of resolution. None of that is simple. None of that is quick. This could take years, or it could collapse tomorrow. Now here's something that blew my mind when I found it, and I guarantee nobody has told you this. This is the kind of information that completely reframes how you should think about silver right now. Russia, the same country negotiating to come back to the dollar, has started adding silver to its strategic reserves, $535 million worth in a multi-year plan. Think about that for a second. The country that's publicly trying to get back into the dollar system is privately hoarding silver. India has bought over 900 million ounces of silver through government and private purchases over the last 5 years. That's more silver than what's sitting in LBMA vaults. Saudi Arabia is stacking silver through ETFs. These aren't Reddit traders. These aren't YouTube guys. These are nations buying physical silver. Why? Because physical metal can't be frozen, can't be sanctioned, and can't be printed by anyone's central bank. So the same country that wants dollars is also hoarding silver. Let that sit with you for a moment. That tells you everything about how governments actually think about this game. They say one thing in public and do another thing in private. The dollar is useful, but real metal is the insurance policy. Now let me leave you with the biggest takeaway from this entire story. And I think this is the part that ties everything together. Russia running back to the dollar doesn't prove the dollar is unbeatable. It proves the dollar is a weapon. Russia didn't choose the dollar because they love America. They chose it because their economy is crumbling. The yuan trapped them. BRICS delivered nothing. And Trump's tariff threats scared everyone into line. But here's what the dollar as king crowd is missing. Every other country on earth watched this whole thing play out in real time. China watched. India watched. Saudi Arabia watched. They all saw America freeze $300 billion. They saw a country get kicked off SWIFT overnight. They saw the dollar get weaponized. And you can bet every single one of them made a mental note. The dollar is powerful, yes. But it can be turned against you at any moment. That fear doesn't go away because Russia changed its mind. That fear is exactly why central banks keep buying gold, not because they hate America, because they want insurance in case the dollar weapon ever gets pointed at them. JP Morgan's latest forecast puts gold at 6,300 by the end of this year. Goldman Sachs says 5,400 with significant upside risk. UBS says 6,200 by March. These aren't random bloggers. These are the biggest banks on the planet. When JP Morgan puts out a price target, portfolio managers with billions of dollars listen. And after gold crashed from 5,600 to 4,400, you know what happened? Dip buyers stepped right back in. Gold bounced back above 5,000 within a week. Because the people who manage real money know that one leaked memo doesn't kill a bull market. It creates a buying opportunity. Silver's supply deficit keeps getting worse. Mines are closing. Mexico changed its mining regulations and cut output by 5%. Russia's mining sector is crippled by the same sanctions that are pushing them back to the dollar. And every country on Earth is building more solar panels and more electric cars that need silver. The International Energy Agency keeps revising solar forecasts higher. Every revision means more silver demand. So yes, silver crashed. Yes, it might bounce around a bit more. But I've watched markets long enough to know that the biggest winners are the people who stay cool when everyone else loses their mind. The people who bought silver at $12 during COVID in 2020 are sitting on massive gains today, even after this correction. The ones who panic sold are still kicking themselves. Markets reward patience. They punish fear every single time. The dollar won a battle. But the war for the future of money isn't over. And in that war, physical silver and physical gold aren't the losers. They're the only assets that no government, no central bank, and no secret memo can print out of thin air. That's not my opinion. That's 5,000 years of human history. So here's the bottom line. Short term, expect noise. Expect scary headlines designed to shake you out of your position. Weak hands will get shaken out. That's how it's always worked. But zoom out. Look at the supply deficit that keeps growing. Look at central banks buying gold at record pace. Look at nations quietly hoarding silver while publicly chasing dollars. Look at the U.S. debt clock ticking past 38 trillion. And look at history. Every single major correction in precious metals was followed by higher highs. Everyone. The people who folded under pressure regretted it. The people who stayed the course ended up very glad they did. This time won't be different. Everything points in one direction over the long run, and that direction is up. That's my honest take. That's how I see this whole situation. Now, I want to hear yours. Drop a comment and tell me, are you buying this dip or are you waiting? I read every single comment and I'll pin the best ones. If this video helped you see something you didn't see before, that like button is right there. And if you're not subscribed yet, you're missing breakdowns like this every single week. This is The Hidden Economy. I'll see you in the next one.